When shall we start? I think it is already 6 minutes past 6, so we are fashionably late, and let's start this session. I would like to welcome you to this session, to this talk, and this is a session called The End of Gender with the question marks, and we will be discussing today the issue of gender and the construction of the language of gender in the last few years. I have invited a speaker, Maciej Duda, who is the author of Dogmat Płci, The Dogma of Sex, which was published last year, and who looked at all conservative publication throughout the last 3-4 years, and trying to understand the discourse of gender in the contemporary Poland as the example of Eastern Europe. Unfortunately, due to personal reasons, he was unable to come, and he's not going to be with us. So what I offer you instead, I will present my history, represent my research on gender and notion of equality politics and body politics in Poland for the last 25 years, with giving you the idea of what Maciej wanted to talk about. He sent me his video of about 25 minutes talk with the PowerPoint presentation, and this video will be sent to you via Eventbrite registration tomorrow. And I will also send you all additional material. So in this way, this session will not end today, but it will continue. And I obviously invite you to contact me to discuss and ask any questions which you, if you will have any for Maciej. This very event is part of a project which I initiated at the beginning of this academic year, and I called it Gender Queer in Literature, Film and Art in the Other Europe, with the Polish focus. And during this Festival of Culture, we have about 7 events that are concentrated on Poland, that focus on Polish issue. And I need to thank many people who helped me, and I won't bore you with all the list, but I need to mention the very director of the Festival of Culture, Catherine Thompson, who was very supportive, and she helped us to organize all this event. And if we talk about financial support, this event was made possible thanks to Grant Challenge at UCL and the support of SEAS, as well as School of Slavonic and East European Studies, which I am part of, and the European Institute of UCL. And today we will have a small session of my introduction, and then I give the floor to Dr. Richard Moll from School of Slavonic and East European Studies, who will introduce our next speaker, Błażej Warkocki, who will talk about the first anthology of queer in Poland. Maybe we can close the door, it's going to be a little bit quiet. And then at about 7:45, hopefully I will invite you for a glass of wine for a small reception, and if hopefully you will come back to our presentation about queer art by Katarzyna Perlak. Okay, let's start. What I wanted to tell you today is it's based on my research. I deal with feminist reception in Poland, women's writing in Poland, and gender studies in Poland for about 20 years. And if I had to, in the very, very short presentation of about 20 minutes, hopefully, give you the vision of what's going on in Poland in terms of gender studies, I made a probably quite risky theory of optimistic turn of the 1990s and the beginning of 2000s, and then more or less from about 2005, a really, really kind of pessimistic turn, very critical attitude to what is gender, and quite visible critical language of gender, which obviously is based on gender, of misunderstanding of what gender is. So what I tell you today is basically about this, my theory, and I invite you to discuss and disagree with me. And then I tell you about the war against gender, or something which we called the end, we called with the organizer of the festival, the end of gender. I wanted to start with these photos, which are kind of symbolic. When in 1990s we start with the gender studies, and gender studies took the notion of gender from the social and political construction of femininity and masculinity, so quite straightforward, in the obviously heteronormative tradition. And we took it from gender studies. I use this inclusive we as the first author that worked in the gender studies, where they published the books on women's writing in Poland, that started the discussion on the conferences about feminist scholarship and feminist methodology. When we started this 1990s gender optimistic turn, we actually didn't care about gender. Gender was to be deconstructed. Gender was to be shown how oppressive the notion is. And that was the optimistic thing. The end of gender, let's finish the thinking through the gender perspective, through the gender glances. This developed to this, which I wanted to give you in the kind of symbolic way, to this kind of gender fear. The notion of gender, which is now still going on in Polish political debate and kind of intellectual debate, the gender as the enemy. Well, this basically how did it happen. From we don't care about gender, and we don't want to talk, we wanted to deconstruct gender, to labeling gender, people who want to deconstruct gender are those who propagate, who are the advocate, who are the apostles of gender. I hope that at the end of the talk you will understand what I'm talking about, and how did it happen? How those who were against gender started to be the apostle of gender, the genderist, the advocate of something which is now called ideology of gender. Okay, but optimistically speaking, 1990s is the implementation of gender studies. There are gender studies at Warsaw University, Jagiellonian University, and many of us in the audience were part of this, or agent of creating those gender studies. There is the beginning of language of the equality also in terms of politics. In 1997, there is a new constitution, and this new constitution actually openly have a special paragraph about equality, about the equality politics. Well, there is also the beginning of thinking about the body politics and the LGBTQ issues. In 2001, as I think the result of the optimistic 1990s, we have a very interesting position in government, governmental plenipotentiary for equal status of women and men. And it is established within government, and it is from the beginning a body that works for women's rights, domestic violence, against homophobia, against trying to create at least the proposition of the bill for civil partnerships. So it is clearly very opening and very important political body. The first plenipotentiary was Izabela Jaruga-Nowacka, and then in 2004 Magdalena Schroeder. Both of the figures are very important in notion of thinking about equality politics in Poland of the last 25 years. Jaruga-Nowacka created the campaign, which is, I think, a very important standpoint too, very important part of contemporary gender history in Poland, which is 2003 campaign Niech nas zobaczą, which was a series of posters of same-sex couples, and actually put in the very open, very accessible for general audience social spaces. For the first time in Polish history, I think the social space is given through governmental money, through governmental support to the pictures of gay and lesbians, and I think it is a very important. It was a very important the beginning of acceptance of this politics. Niech nas zobaczą means let them see us, and you, when you think about it, probably think, okay, there is a building, or that the title of the campaign maybe it is a little bit relying on some sort of binary that let them, they, and us. So if I have to be frank, I think the title is a little bit controversial. Anyway, I think it was a very important element. In 2005, so we have this political agenda of equality, of gender politics. And in 2005, this governmental body is dismissed. But basically, the Magdalena Schroeder, the then plenipotentiary, is dismissed of the post, from the post, and the government then, peace government, Law and Justice Party, put this agenda into within the labor ministry, basically diminishing it, basically hiding it, or basically openly saying we have the same agenda, but in fact marginalizing it or dissolving it completely. 2005, or around 2005, there's also a series of events that started to kind of see this point of pessimistic turn. And in 2004, we have things that was we have these kind of little events that then include Magdalena Schroeder, then plenipotentiary, who in December 2004 went to the international conference on honor killings in Stockholm. When she was asked about the situation in Poland, she said something like that: Catholicism does not directly support or oppose violence against women, but there are indirect links through culture which is strongly based on religion. And this event, this controversy, which was blown up by the media, as you can imagine, she did, and again explain what was her philosophical background to this statement. But again, there was things were taken out of context, and she was basically made a witch, a national enemy, someone that is against Catholicism. And this event around 2004, 2003 is definitely the moment when gender studies started to be intertwined with religion. And we know we do not play with religion. There is nothing, let's stay away. But that is definitely the moment when gender studies were started to be created as the national threat. Okay, I wanted to be still a little bit optimistic. The optimistic term on 1990s is definitely a term of the term of a lot of literary events, literary happenings, literary phenomena that were based on this new reading, feminist research, gender studies. And for me personally, one of the most important person of the 1990s, which we actually have today in our audience, is Izabela Filipiak, now Izabela Mowska, who will be actually speaking about her experiences of that time and today's Poland tomorrow at Waterstone at 4 o'clock. So you're very welcome to come and to listen to us talking. Izabela Filipiak in 1995 wrote one of the most important books of that time, which is Absolutna Amnesia, the Total Amnesia, and it's kind of feminist reinterpretation of history. And at the end of 1990s, she published first quite openly lesbian collection of poetry. But that was possible because of that time when the themes of rewriting the history, feminist scholarship, gender studies methodology, the theme of motherhood and the body deconstructed were appearing. When the writing of Disappointed appears, and the disappointment was just treated as the beginning of reassession of Polish culture, of revision of Polish culture. And obviously one of the most important things is that gay and lesbian literature started to appear, and that was very meaningful. They show that the openness of that time. I wanted to just give you a glimpse of two of texts, which both were published in 2005. This mythical, the time when I just probably rightly, or I don't know, put as the end of optimism in terms of gender studies, or in terms of reading Poland through gender studies. This is Eva Schilling and her book, never translated book, called The Fall. But it's a quite interesting book, however, basically kind of Bildungsroman, kind of a little naive story for high school reader, but many interesting themes are included, like religion and homosexuality, tradition schooling versus homosexuality, issue of acceptance by both parents and the peer groups. A little bit, definitely an important phenomenon in Polish literature of last 20 years is this, again, 2005, Lubiewo by Michał Witkowski, and this is a very interesting, it is actually translated, it's called Love Town, but it was an amazing new book which introduces a new language, or trying to find a new language of gay and of gay language. So basically what he's doing, he's trying to find a communist tradition of gay history. And he also sees that gay as the language, gay as because in Polish gay means is gay, that is a foreign. So he tries to find out some sort of Polish linguistic tradition of gay. And it is amazingly funny, amazingly interesting, and also creating this generational gap, or generational clash between old communist gay and the new 1990s Western-like, nicely washed and nicely dressed gay. Fantastic read, and this is 2005. And from then on, I think there is a kind of backlash. So even though we have those 1990s, even though we have Witkowski and we have Iza Filipek-Morska, even though we have us, which were doing gender studies and teaching gender studies, and somehow in the last 10 years, we those people who dealt with gender studies woken up and say, well, majority of society doesn't understand what gender is about. Majority of society finds the word strange, but obviously they find the word strange because the very term has been adopted from English. It's never been even transliterated, so it is pronounced and it's kept, the spelling is kept in English. So many people who have never heard about gender would say gender, okay? So even this term was kind of, okay, even this move was probably a mistake that we adopted as some phenomenon we adopted a term which was innocent, which was a sociological term or socio-political term. But we didn't care, and again, I'm sorry for this inclusive we didn't care about the fact that it should be translated because it can be confusing, and it has to be used in the language through footnotes, okay? And nobody likes footnotes. Okay, why monstrous? Well, I go back again to Izabela Filipiak, and I use these monstrous footnotes, kind of remembering discussion at the very end of the 1990s about women's writing. So in the 1990s in Poland are seen as some sort of women's the term of Polish women's writing, the decade of Polish women's writing. And because women's writing becomes popular, some of the critics called women's writing menstrual writing, or dismissive, usually quite a universal gesture of dismissal or rejection. So Izabela Filipiak kind of played with this menstrual writing, saying, okay, no, it's not menstrual, it's monstrous writing, and this monstrous is because it has a very strong deconstructive, element against the normative, let's call it normative culture or canonic thinking of literature and culture. So in this way, gender become monstrous, something innocent, something, just a term, become a social enemy. And this is basically what Maciej Duda, in his book, The Dogma of Sex, is discussing. Basically, I won't give you a lot of detail about this, but basically he's talking about highly conservative debate on what gender is about, with complete misunderstanding and not even will to understanding, or maybe even the notion of some sort of pretending that we don't understand. There's clearly rhetoric, manipulation of rhetoric of creating the enemy. Like we have here Ksiądz Dariusz Oko, and those who follow Polish politics know this name very well, and then here I have also the slide that's showing that this the beginning of creation of gender as the enemy is actually in Catholic Church, and the feminist language was used as the vehicle of this creation of this enemy. Well, I give you a couple of absurd, and I apologize for this quotation. So, gender is a concept, quote, deeply destructive to the person, interhuman relations, and social life. We read in pastoral letter by Polish bishop attacking the so-called ideology of gender, which was read in all churches in December 2013. In December 29, 2013, I'm sorry. In their letter, the bishop said that ideology of gender was strongly rooted in Marxism and neo-Marxism, and had been promoted in Poland for several months by vocal circles with considerable financial means who wanted to experiment on children. There is all there. Basically, monstrous gender was connected to Marxism. There is nothing worse than Marxism, to feminist language. It has dubious financial support, and also it was experimenting on children. All these nonsensical things were repeated in the publication, and Maciej Duda is talking about it. And I will encourage you to watch this 20 minutes films that he created, and he also talks about a phenomenon which I actually came across, that some of the publications are only available on request. And if you request it, the author of this publication check you out. So some of the publications are not available for him or me and never been. So what we have to do in order to have it or read it, however painful it is kind of ask some people who don't have a strong Facebook profile, for example. Why is it rooted in Marxism? I just give you like a little bit of a joke, and I'm sorry for this patronizing attitude, which I actually admit. Well, it's rooted in Marxism because it is rejection of God, atheistic conceit, or atheist pride. It is genderism and Marxism is connected through rejection of spiritual dimension of human being. Gender and Marxism is connected because of lying and violence, complete lack of respect to others, and reject of reason and conscience. Well, everything what is bad is there. So it's. This is what was the beginning, like 2012, 2013, it's basically the beginning of Polish gender trouble. So we have this 29 of December 2013, and it was the letter read in the Catholic Church, which kind of created this or rejected something which they called then the ideology of gender, after being apparently warned by the Pope Emeritus Benedict XVI in December 2013 about it during the Christmas address to the Roman Curia. And you can think it is a joke. Well, that some Catholic readings that it's become such a big deal, but in fact, gender as the word has never been more popular, thanks to this controversy, thanks to Catholic Church rejection of gender. It became a word of the year. Everybody started to talk about gender. You are gender, they say. Okay, so all kind of new linguistic, quite poetic phenomena were created. But nevertheless, And obviously, a feminist circle, and including myself, created the letter to the Pope, signed among others with Professor Magdalena Schroeder, who I was talking about, to stop the false and unreasonable usage of gender by Polish Catholic Church. And unfortunately, the letter was unsuccessful. The open answer seemed to convey the same assumption, and the assumptions are: there is gender ideology, whatever it is, and we still don't have a definition. There is something like genderism, okay? There are gender lobbies, and all this is very dangerous. There is no doubt that this is a rhetoric move. Catholic circles are fully aware of the gender as the science, the gender as the political, sociological concept. And it is used only to confuse or create some sort of enemy. Sławomira Walczewska, which is one of the most renowned Polish feminists, wrote something in Tygodnik Powszechny, which is Catholic Weekly, saying that, well, let's stop fighting over the word. Indeed, it might be a linguistic trick to stop the debate. Avoid the word gender. Once we exchange gender with, let's say, cultural role, it will be easy to swallow it. But will it be enough? Well, or the enemy or the need to have an enemy is much stronger. For answering this question, we probably have to wait. I just wanted to finish with a couple of bittersweet conclusion that gender has become an abstract enemy in the country where, well, equality parade is there, but it's always some sort of cultural event. And in the recent, it's been the 2017 parade was 2 days ago on Saturday, and in the newspaper you have the report saying the organizer says there were 50,000 people present in the parade. The police said, no, there wasn't so much. There is only 13,000. Even fight over the numbers is telling. Gender we talk about gender, we fight over the term when in the country where Polish women have to fight against the ridiculous attempts to restrict already restrictive law, anti-abortion law. And we live in the country where when there is no even a chance now, or even a hope, or even any notion of starting the proposition of the bill of having a civil partnership of same-sex marriages. For about 500 million people in European Union, only 75 million does not have access to civil unions or same-sex marriages. Half of these 75 million are Polish women and men. So if we ask the question, is there the end of gender? Well, I would unfortunately have to say, unfortunately, it's probably just the beginning. Well, thank you very much.
So thank you very much for that very interesting introduction. We're now going to be hearing from Błażej Warkocki, who's a Polish literary critic, publicist, and a lecturer at Adam Mickiewicz University in Poznań. He's a member of the board of Krytyka Polityczna, where he publishes reviews and literary criticism. He's recently published a book called Różowy Język, Pink Tongue, which is about Polish literature and culture read through queer theory, using the concepts of Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick. And today he's presenting his latest project on a Polish anthology of queer literature. So thank you, Błażej.
Okay, thank you very much. First of all, I want to thank Urszula for kindly inviting me here and all organizers. But second thing is that, my English is not perfect. I teach in Polish, so probably I will have some problems. And I would be really glad if you speak or understand Polish, but probably not. You don't at all. So anyway, I try my best, really, I tried my best. Anyway, the project we are working on is entitled Anthology of Polish Queer Literature. And as you see, there are three people who are working on it. Alessandra Menta from Italy, Tomasz Kaliszczak from University of Silesia in Katowice, and me from Poznań Adam Mickiewicz University. Very shortly, probably the most interesting part of the project is the history of that project, history of that book. And basically there were three guys, and we were at the beginning much younger, frankly speaking 10 years younger. And we were writing our PhD dissertations. And we wanted to do something really important for our culture. And that's how we wanted to make an anthology of Polish so-called queer literature. And we started working on that project, but unfortunately we didn't succeed mostly because of the money, because it's quite expensive thing, because of the copyrights, because all stuff. And but at the end of 2015, there appeared an opportunity to get a grant for a book like that, for editing literary materials. So we applied, and what was really very surprising for us, we succeeded, and we got a grant, and we're very happy. But unfortunately, 3 or 4 days later, the big newspaper in Poland, Rzeczpospolita, it's quite important newspaper in Poland, wrote an article about the grant, and it was, it was kind of a homophobic attack, I would just say. And the content of that article was spread in many right-wing websites, and it was really not very nice, as you can imagine. There are really many details about the whole history, but it's not probably so interesting. So let's go to the project. Okay, the form. That's anthology. We thought about it like anthology, so we thought about it like a reader, something like a reader. So there is a literary text we choose, and there's at the beginning there is some information, basic information about the author, about the book, because there is only a fragment of it in our anthology. And what is the most important thing here, there should be, the beginning of queer interpretation of that literary text, because many of them is from the canon of Polish literature. Time range. I mean that we wanted everything. So we wanted to start with 19th century Polish literature and end it in 2001 very contemporary books. Because, for example, we're very interested in same-sex friendship in 19th century Polish literature, which is really very interesting and has kind of a queer potential, I would say. Another thing is state of research. Okay, so I mean here that, it's not very original. The idea was not very original, because there is well, 20 years of research, or even more, 20 years of research of queer research and feminist research. So basically, we just read it, and that's our that's the reason of our choices. So I want to say that it's not very. The idea was not very original, and the most important thing is, of course, why we are doing it, and why we wanted to do that. And well, at the beginning, I didn't think about that, but now I think that we wanted to create something like minor literature. Of course, it's a Malaysian term, and but I think it really fits very perfectly with our goals. Of course, in Dela's thinking of minor literature, he was writing about Kafka, right? He of course didn't mean by minor literature literature written in different language, but literature minority who writes literature in hegemon's language to deconstruct positions of privilege, I would say. So I think that putting things very short, we would like to create kind of minor literature within Polish canon. Methodology. Another quite important thing for us, we really like, I really like, but we all really like Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick and her thinking about literature and life, in fact. So the two quite early Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick's books are important for us, Between Men, English Literature and Homosocial Desire from 1985, and Epistemology of the Closet from 1990. And another quite important text for us was Thinking Through Queer Theory. It's an essay written, which we can find in the Weber and Proust, the book that was by Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick that was published after her death. But it's really interesting and important because I think that she, kind of summarized her ideas, especially her early ideas, because then she turned a little bit into affect theory. But the quite important thing for us here was that she thought about feminist criticism and gay studies combined together. But of course, she remembered about differences and incoherences between these two approaches. Main features of her thoughts, which are quite important in our job, in our project, are, probably two: non-dualism and anti-separatism. And non-dualism, that's the term she used when she was describing herself, is when concept A is opposed to concept B. Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick asked the question, are they really so distinct from each other? And I think it's a really interesting point of thinking of homo-hetero distinction. And we are trying to do the same thing in our project. And anti-separatism is another thing. Of course, it's on the ethical and political level. She says, that's the quotation, I have a little patience with separatism of any kind. And we wouldn't like to make any separatist book, for example, gay separatist book. So I think that these two features are quite important in Eve Kosowski-Sedgwick thinks and in our thinking as well. Of course, we trying to think through her terms like male homosocial desire and male, not only male, homosexual panic, and the consequences for women. Another quite important thing in our project is the queer versus homosexuality distinction, because we chose the term queer in the title of our project. So it's really strange because, well, the term queer, like the term gender, doesn't mean anything in Polish. It's just a foreign word, right? It's probably a little bit strange, especially from Polish reader point of view, to use that term, especially in the title. But I think it's much better to use queer, because queer is, kind of umbrella term, as we know, but I think in Polish context it is quite an umbrella term as well. And it is much more, I would say, transhistorical and transcultural. So when we think about Polish romanticism and Polish same-sex friendship in 19th century, I think that we can use the term queer, because it is a little bit queer from present point of view, that kind of friendship. That's why we chose the term queer. And, another thing is that, in Polish context, it is probably a little bit strange, but in Polish context, I think that the term queer can be kind of a closet, because it's just a foreign word, so it doesn't mean anything for normal ears. It's not so much now, I think, because of the gender panic, and queer can mean something very, 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 very horrible. But anyway, it can be sometimes, or can work as a closet, which we thought could be nice for us, but maybe it's not. Okay, so that's the quotation I really like, because I think it's summarizes if Kosowski-Sedgwick thinking about queer politics and about queer approach to, for example, working on literature. It seems true, if Kosowski-Sedgwick, to say that queer politics are both anti-separatist and anti-assimilationist. Anti-separatist in the sense that we don't take it for granted that the world is neatly and naturally divided between homosexuals and heterosexuals, and anti-assimilationist in the sense that we are not eager to share in the privileges and presumptions of normality. Of course, it sounds a little bit utopian, I think, but I like that approach, and I really would like to think about the project we are working on through that quotation as kind of a ghost of our work. Okay, some doubts and problems we have, a part of many, many others. Transgender, of course, I don't mean that that we don't want transgender people texts in our book. Quite the opposite, we want, because, for example, I think many, maybe not many, but a couple of novels written by transgender people in Polish now. They're autobiographical, but there is one really important figure in Polish canon, Maja Komanicka-Piotr Włast, And well, that's the question here is that there's a long, long history of feminist work on her life and her work, his, and Izabela Filipiak-Morska did a really interesting part of it. But I'm wondering if, from the political point of view, maybe we should think about him, not her, about Piotr Włast as a transgender person. So, well, that's my approach now, but maybe Izabela thinks differently. Another thing is, we can discuss it later. Another thing is, okay, queer is another name for my homosexuality, which is a really big problem, even in Polish context, and in the project like that as well. And of course, we would like to avoid it. And I hope that we will succeed. Another thing is exclusivity. What I mean by that, suddenly it appeared in my head that, well, in Polish context, I think there is a big distinction between literary text and non-literary text. Maybe, I'm not quite sure, maybe not so much like in English or Anglo-American context. I mean that journalism, essays, literary criticism is not as much important as poetry or prose. In Polish context, the division is, I think, really, really important, and it's connected with power relations. And, well, we are, of course, focused on the real literary text, and now I think maybe it wasn't the best idea. Okay, last but not least, propositions from Polish canon. Of course, propositions are, if you have any other ideas, it would be great. It's from 19th century, from Polish Romanticism, Słowacki, Żmichowska, Stürmer, Kaczkowski, period 10 of 19th and 20th century, which is very, very important historically here. And, of course, contemporary literary texts as well. So that's our idea, and we hope that we will succeed, and we will make that, I hope, interesting and important book. Well, basically, that's it. If you have any questions, I will be very glad to answer. Thank you.
Ola, are you going to come to the front as well?
We don't have to, okay.
Okay, so who has questions for either of the two speakers?